Wow, what an incredible episode of Mushoku Tensei. I'm not even sure what to say about it because it was just a shocking episode all around. I never expected for Rudy to get impaled like this, to learn so much about the world, and to be at the same time confused and have so many questions on so many details of this episode in regards to Dragon God Orsted. I mean, this episode is everything it was all cracked up to be. This may be my favorite episode of Mushoku Tensei yet, which is not crazy to say because this episode was really damn great. And I think seeing the response from people on Twitter and on Reddit and stuff, yeah, it seems like a lot of people are really digging this episode, and why not? So let's go ahead and just get right into it and talk about this episode. But before we do that, I want to remind you all that check back in later today. Today's a double upload day because we're doing Demon Slayer Entertainment District Arc episode 1 today. We're going to be talking about that. So once you get done with this video, make sure to come back a couple hours later and we're going to have a video on Demon Slayer season 2. So let's get right into it. So the episode actually starts off pretty brilliantly, and I thought that the way that they would start off this episode meant that we wouldn't actually get the payoff that we did. Basically, what it starts off with is it starts off with Rudy having basically a hole in his chest and collapsing. Basically what happened at the very end of the episode, pretty much, or the very middle of the episode, I should say. And that's pretty much the opening scene. And I thought that for a moment, you know, because we saw this in the opening scene, that this would happen in the next couple of episodes and they would make us wait. But to their credit, they didn't. All that stuff was in this episode, and it was a shocking opening to the episode, and it made you definitely hyper invested with what's going on. So I guess getting into some of the preamble stuff before we just get into talking about the Dragon God Orsted stuff in that scene, because I think you guys want me to talk about that for a long time. So we're gonna get this short stuff here out of the way. We learn that there are dragons in the world of Mushoku Tensei, which is actually very cool. Of course, this is a fantasy setting, so in many ways that's to be expected, but what they talk about them in this episode is actually really cool in my opinion. Apparently dragons roam in packs, and many of the 7 gods would be able to defeat one dragon, but just one of them is only basically able to take out one. If there is a pack of dragons, like 2 or more, then they wouldn't be able to defeat a dragon at all, which is really interesting. That goes to show the might and power of a dragon. And I wonder if we're ever going to get to a part in the series where we get to see a dragon up close, if there is going to be, you know, like that moment where we either get to fight a dragon or we get to see one talk or they ride one. I don't know. It would just be really cool. I love dragons in anime because you don't really see that often, like at all. There's typically never any dragons unless it's like a dragon maid. which is a dragon, to be fair, but not the kind of dragons that I think a lot of people really enjoy in a fantasy setting. I seriously cannot think of a single anime series that has a dragon in that same way, and I don't think you can count Skyrim as an anime either. Another interesting tidbit is that Aerys has graduated from Ruijerd's school of hard knocks. I'm not sure what this imaginary school is in my head that I have created that Aerys has attended, but either way, it's a really nice moment. She is deemed strong enough to call herself a warrior by Ruijerd, even though that she wasn't able to defeat her. And I think that is a rather interesting way to go about that. And she's very proud of that fact that she is able to graduate and become this warrior that she thought that she would have to literally defeat Ruijerd in battle, which, I mean, to be fair, when we saw them fighting in this episode, that was some really good stuff. So very good on Aerys, Aerys. Really enjoyed her character arc throughout this whole series, and this episode probably has some of my favorite Aerys moments, including this, where she is now able to call herself a warrior and she's super wholesome. She goes up to Rudy. It's like, Rudy, pinch me. It shows that she probably never thought that she would hit this moment, and now that she has, it's a big deal for her. She obviously holds Ruijerd in such a high regard and standard, but as well Rudy, that she has to almost like question her reality. It's one of those things where it's probably, you know, this big goal that she's had in mind, and now that she's been able to do it, and able to do it in such a way where she's literally just become strong enough to call herself a warrior on her own, that's pretty cool stuff. I really like that character development for Aerys. So the part of the episode that everybody has been howling about, and rightfully so. So they're in the mountains. This is after they get done talking about dragons, and they freeze. And when I say they, I mean Aerys and Ruijerd freeze. And Rudy's like, huh? Like, why aren't you guys moving? We later learn that this is actually a curse that has been taken into effect, which is, we'll take note of this because it's very important. We'll talk about that in a second, why I think the minor details of this scene, you may have not noticed something here. So Rudy focuses his eyes into the snowstorm, and there we see Orsted and Nana, what was her name? I want to get her name right because I wrote it down wrong the first time. Nanahoshi. I think I wrote it down as Nanashi, as the incorrect way in my notes, but it's Nanahoshi is her name, and she's tagged along with dragon god Orsted. Now, let's talk about a little bit of his curse, because we learned about his curse. His curse is that of fear. Basically, well, it's not just fear. It puts hate and fear into people. So there's some people that react to him by hating him. Some people react to him by fear. In this case, it's petrifying fear for Rudy and Aerys and the cow. The cow is so fearful. Is it a cow or is it like an ox? Either way, it doesn't really matter. The cow jumps off the cliff, killing itself. That is really dark, and it goes to show immediately, like, ooh, this Orsted guy, this guy means serious business. Also, one of the most acclaimed voice actors and voice actresses for both of these characters. I can't remember their names at the moment. Somebody put down in the comments below if you do, but I think the girl, she sounds like Rie Takahashi, I want to say. Though I could be very much wrong on that. But that's what she sounded like to me out of the couple lines that we saw of her in this episode. Either way, they're both, doesn't matter who their voice actors and actresses are, very acclaimed celebrity voice actors in this series for Orsted and Nanahoshi. See, what I find most interesting about this scene is that Orsted immediately knows the names of Aerys and Rudy, and that is very interesting to me. Why is that? Is that a power that he has, like some sort of foresight in some way, or maybe he like just knows all of the most important people in this world right now, some of the strongest people, because as we know, Rudy is quite a strong character in this Mushoku Tensei universe. So how does that work? How did Orsted know immediately who these two were? I don't really have many theories on that. I have theories surrounding other things. For example, how he didn't know that Paul Grey Rat, that Rudy wasn't a Grey Rat. He didn't know that. He didn't know that Paul had more than $2. Why is that? Well, my theory is simple. It's because Rudy is part of the apostle of the man god, as Orsted called it in this episode, where he called him an apostle of man god. It's very interesting because in other isekai series, these gods and goddesses, of whatever you want to call them, that kind of grant these extra lives into these other worlds, usually the characters in that universe don't know who they are. Like, they're not like, you know, it's like we, for example, if we had a god in our world, we wouldn't know. We don't know who that is, right? It's like the same mechanic there. You don't know who's the programmer of the video game. You just play the video game and you're immersed in the world. But it seems like Man God here is this active character. So that makes me think as well, like, are the worlds of Earth connected to this other world? If so, that just makes it really, really interesting. Makes me question a lot of things. But either way, I think because Rudy is a part of this apostle of man god thing going on here, he's not affected by the curses of Orsted, because he seems to have more than one. At least that's what I'm getting. And he's not affected by this other, I guess, curse that Orsted may have, which is something that gives him this ability to know people's names or whatever without ever meeting them. That's the only way that I can make sense of Orsted not knowing that Paul had more than 2 children. But as well, there's a bit of dialogue where before Orsted attacks, he asks Rudy, do you know Man God? And Rudy immediately is like, yeah, I see the guy in my dreams all the time. Like, he was happy to finally say that out loud. But that's not the important part. The important part is that through deduction, he was able to figure out that Man God was a part of this, which makes me think that all of the other 7 powers know exactly who Man God is, but as well are able to easily deduct and figure out if they would converse with Rudy on a couple things that, oh yeah, he's a part of Man God Apostle, whatever that may be. Very, Very cool stuff here. A lot of dialogue in this episode was very important, extremely important so. Has a lot of theories, a lot of stuff attached to it that we just don't know. Lots of questions through just simple statements. And that's what I love about Mushoku Tensei. Like literally, the writing for this series is top tier when it wants to be top tier. Sometimes it's a little slow. Like I had my issues with the last episode. A lot of people hated on me about that. That's totally fine, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that this series is probably one of the best written anime of the year. That's just kind of the way it is, especially in terms of characters, but as well in terms of its dialogue, its character interactions. It's really good stuff. I mean, it really is. So Orsted fights them all. Orsted really makes quick work of Ruijerd. And of course, we know that Ruijerd is, I think, the strongest person that we know so far, at least in terms of normal party members. Like he is the strongest of the characters in the Mushoku Tensei universe so far. Maybe Ghislaine is right up there with Ruijerd as well. But either way, he didn't get a scratch pretty much on Orsted at all. Orsted blocked literally all of his lance attacks, knocked him out, damn near killing him. Same for Aerys. She runs with her blade, very angry, of course, fitting of Aerys' character. He catches her blade with the fingertips and just gut punches her like in the Broly movie when Goku gut punches Broly. Or was it the other way around? Broly gut punches Goku. Either way, you know the scene. Everybody knows the scene. Knocks out Aerys and then basically kills Rudy. Like just straight up just kills him with a lot of ease. And of course, I think it's very important to note though, that in Rudy's dying breath, that he was able to, well, dying breaths, he was able to use a lot of very crafty magic, things like putting air into his lungs to uncollapse his stomach and his lungs and actually breathe and do stuff. And he was able to use fireball. He shot, I don't know what you would call it, but basically a projectile, pretty much, at Orsted and damaged his hand a little bit too. I don't think we've seen Aerys or Ruijerd damage Orsted, so that's interesting in of itself. And well, it's not enough. He essentially, Orsted is just simply finishes the job, puts a hole in his stomach, and he dies. Air quotes dies. As he's unconscious, we get checks notes. Nanahoshi. Nanahoshi is like, wait, I have a feeling. Maybe and that's all we see before he passes out, and of course he talks to Man God about his stuff. Well, he wakes up and we learn that, checks notes, that Nanahoshi basically was talking to Orsted, and because of that, whatever they were talking about, Orsted cast a healing spell, healed Rudy, and then Aerys and Ruijerd took it the rest of the way. Pretty good stuff. It makes me think that there is something up with Rudy through some reason that Orsted needs to keep Rudy alive, or at the very least Nanahoshi needs to keep Rudy alive for whatever reason it may be. We may not get the reason in these episodes, though I am curious as to what exactly is going to happen in the next episodes, because after this attack, what do? Do they just keep traveling? Well, they can't keep traveling. Their ox died. Do they just go and get the supplies from the ox somehow? Do they heal the ox if it's still alive and continue their journey? There are so many questions that I have for the next episodes of what is going to happen. I don't know where Orsted or Nanahoshi is going. Are they these malevolent people in this world that are going around and interjecting themselves into whatever it may be to create chaos? Are they there for a purpose? What is their goal in this universe, in this story? Obviously, these two are very important characters, and it seems like at the very least, Nanahoshi may be the more interesting one coming out of this episode, because we know a lot about Orsted coming out of this episode. We don't know a lot about Nanahoshi, and it seems like Nanahoshi is the reason why Rudy is alive. So many questions, so many theories. Please put down the comments below what are your questions and theories and all that stuff on the episode, and tell me if you enjoyed this episode of Mushoku Tensei or not. Is it your favorite episode? I think it's, if it's not my favorite episode, it's up there. This was a very terrific episode. I genuinely mean that. This was an awesome episode. Before we get into the outro bits of this video though, so please don't leave, I want to remind you all that today we're going to do a double upload of Demon Slayer after this video goes up. So if you already seen this video, maybe check back in your sub feed an hour or so later, and that video should be up, and I would appreciate it if you all stayed around and stuck around for that video. While we wait for next week's episode of Mushoku Tensei, please watch my video on the changes. Please check out my Vladilena Millies A video. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. If you're a fan of 86, you probably should go watch it because it explains everything about her character. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.